Well, new horrific details emerging about the man believed responsible for a massacre in Norway. The suspect just appearing in court where he was ordered held for 8 weeks before he reappears again. He's admitted to the car bombing in Oslo as well as to the cold-blooded shootings on a nearby island, although he did plead not guilty. This story raises a lot of questions about the risk here of domestic terrorism, a similar attack. Stuart Verdery is a former assistant secretary at the Department of Homeland Security. And Stuart, of course, when these stories happen, our hearts go out to those overseas that experience it, but it also causes quite a bit of introspection here at home.
That's for sure. Take
us behind the curtain a little bit. When something like this happens, what is the reaction of the Department of Homeland Security? What's the talk behind the scenes?
Well, it's not just the federal Department of Homeland Security, but of course our local and state police forces who are always going to be the first ones on the scene. And I think the good news is that we have built up a pretty robust capability over 10 years, both on the infiltration of potential plots, looking out for lone wolf terrorists, those things, but also our response capability, which I feel fairly certain would have been much stronger in most parts of our country than they had overseas, unfortunately. But there is a real concern. We have both kind of the folks who may be coming in are an al-Qaeda plot, who may be here for quite a while, maybe have U.S. citizenship. We also have right-wing extremists, as we've seen, both in the United States and abroad. So our law enforcement has their work cut out for them.
Well, extremists really of any kind, right? I mean, it could be of any category or description. What's the biggest challenge then for finding that one individual that could pose such a threat?
Well, the internet, unfortunately, has sparked such a flurry of people who are ranting and raving. We saw this with the Gifford shooting earlier this year, and law enforcement has to decide within constitutional protections when a person has reached a point where a plot is imminent. We have some devices tracking things like explosives and fertilizer sales, obviously gun control measures, and those issues are very controversial. But I do think that the walls we've torn down since 9/11 between fighting terrorism on one hand and law enforcement activities on the other have made it easier for law enforcement to look at those types of plots and individuals who may be plotting things, who may be about to become activated.
Well, it is comforting to know that there is a system, it seems, in place now compared to maybe 10, 20, 30 years ago. It's interesting to know, we were on the air, of course, when this story was developing on Friday, and there was instantly a lot of speculation about Muslim extremists in Norway and the relationship between the Muslim community that's growing there. And that's the direction that the story went, at least initially. And that can be dangerous, of course. Today on Capitol Hill, there's a hearing being held about the Muslim Brotherhood and growth here in America. And I'm just wondering, generally, are we too myopic when we're looking at terror and trying to prevent a terror attack? Do you feel that maybe we're too short-sighted in one direction here as we look at prevention and security?
Well, I'm not sure I'd say we're too myopic. Obviously, the threat over the last 10 years has largely been foreign-based, and I think we've done the appropriate things both on border security and law enforcement. But unfortunately, we're a big country. We have people of a wide range, a spectrum of views. We've seen with the Oklahoma City bombing 15 years ago or so that people can use their legal status here to our disadvantage. And so law enforcement is pretty good at looking out for these things. In terms of the congressional work, there's going to be another hearing this week on radicalization. I think those are appropriate type of hearings. Other countries overseas have had to battle with this in the UK and Europe much longer than we have, and we definitely should learn lessons from them. But those threats can come from anywhere. Unfortunately, we've seen it this week in Norway.
And you point out, so rightly so, that...
Remember, it's better to tell the truth.
And that's no lie. Now we know.
And knowing is half the battle.